In this month's episode of Speak Out and Play, I will discuss what is the perfect game, what's new in Warfighter Corner, what's in the works, and what is coming up for the month of March on the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel. All this and more on Speak Out and Play. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the second season of Speak Out and Play for February 2024. It's been an interesting month so far in my state of Oklahoma. To tell you what the weather is like, on Monday, February 12th, we had over 4 inches of snow, which is not all that unusual. But 3 days later, on the 15th, I walked out into the field near the house and I saw flowers blooming. Welcome to Oklahoma. But enough about our weather, the flowers, the earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, and all the things that we like to call a weekday in this here state. And instead, I will start on the main subject, which is seeking out the perfect game. One of the goals I have for the podcast is to create broader subjects to help generate a little discussion while still sticking within the confines of wargaming. And this month's subject will be about the perfect game. Is there a perfect game? What is a perfect game? If the perfect game did exist, would you need another game? That's pretty interesting. The quest for the perfect game is an interesting one for sure, especially now when the wargaming community is being flooded with new games. I discussed the reason why this is happening back in the January 2024 episode of Speak Out and Play, so I just want to focus on the idea of the perfect game. What is it? Well, I'm sure everyone has their own ideas of what a perfect game is, but for me, it includes the following. It has to have a timeless system, comprehensible rules, a relatively fast setup time, clear available strategies, and is endlessly replayable. As you can hear, my criteria is pretty broad when it comes to what is a perfect game, but it all focuses on the classic components. A timeless system is, generally speaking, a straightforward one that makes the game seem like it could have been printed yesterday. Comprehensible rules sounds rather vague, and if you're thinking that, thank you. That was my intention. It's a way of saying that the rules should be clear, unambiguous, and complete. I do not expect perfection in the rules, but the questions should be few and far between. A fast setup time seems rather small and unimportant at first, but for me, I like to get into the game in a reasonable amount of time. Now, Warfighter, for example, requires that you create a team for each mission, but I count that as being part of the game because I enjoy mixing and matching personnel, skills, weapons, and gear. Placing counters on a map is something I don't enjoy as much. Choices are what makes games interesting. It is true that some games have limited strategies if you want to win, but games that allow you to switch things up and pursue a new strategy does offer greater interest, at least for me. And finally, there is the question of replayability. A one-and-done game is never going to be perfect, but a game that becomes an obvious choice for most play sessions is one that is on the path to perfection. So, is there a game that I feel is perfect, at least by the standards from which I stated? I'm not really sure. I can take, for example, the blue and gray games that were originally made by SPI back in the 1970s that offer elements of perfection, at least for me, on the surface. It does have a classic system, simple rules, fast setup, clear strategies, and they are replayable. But perhaps with the exception of Chickamauga, I don't find the rest of the games to be at the same replayability level. Now, Chickamauga may be the most perfect, or the closest to perfection in the bunch. Perhaps because of the nature of the battle itself, combined with the simple rules, does make it close to a classic. Unfortunately, it's also out of print. So if perfection in your regard means the game has to be readily available, well, it's not going to come close on that count. But at least in terms of the game itself, I think that there are not that many that come close to meeting the criteria for perfection that I have. But what about you? Do you set criteria about what is a perfect game? Or is the next new game just the perfect one? As you can see, I'm trying to limit the number of games that I purchase. And this gets me to what my YouTube channel will be focused on for the foreseeable future. Getting more out of the existing games rather than buying a bunch of new games, doing a single video, and then never revisiting the game again. Back in the 1970s, I grew up with games from Avalon Hill, a company that put out a few war games each year. But with the General magazine, there would be a lot of articles focused on each game. Well, at least most of their games. Having said that, at the same time, SPI put out a bunch of new games, something like over 400, over the same time period. So there is that. My hope is to find that perfect game, not only for my shelf, but also for the channel. Yet another game I can devote time and effort to fleshing out. I've done that with a few games, which includes the Undaunted series, Upfront, and others. So, for example, Warfighter. Is Warfighter a perfect game? Well, it's certainly in the running for me. It's also the perfect segue to Warfighter Corner. Hello and welcome to Warfighter Corner, and we're going to start with more information that has been released about the new core set of the Warfighter series, Ch'Tor. On the DVG Warfighter Facebook page, Kevin Verison stated that the set will bring new hostiles, strategy, and mechanics to the Warfighter series. One new addition is called Field Points, in which if a hostile is eliminated without using fire, spray, or explosives, the points you will earn will allow you to call in gear cards during the mission or activate a skill card and receive an instant bonus. The idea behind the field points is to introduce the concept of preserving the bodies of the hostiles for scientific study. Now, what I like about the idea of field points is that it adds something new to Warfighter without having to add a bunch of new rules. It's pretty simple, straightforward, and something you can ignore if you just want to blow up the hostile to save your own skin. The focus of Warfighter Ch'Tor is to reduce the number of keywords and simplify some of the concepts without reducing the number of choices. For example, there will be no environ roles in Warfighter Ch'Tor and only 2 soldier types, player and team. My guess is that with the popularity of the series from which the game is based, that simplifying some of the concepts allows for a broader audience to be introduced to Warfighter, and all without sacrificing what Warfighter is all about. And since I'm a fan of simpler, I don't mind having no non-player or squad soldiers in the game. Now, going off on that, I would say that I'm not exactly a fan of team soldiers, although I don't mind their presence in the Warfighter system. But having said that, given the focus of this core set, this is one that I'm looking forward to playing when it comes out. Now, to go on a little rant about team soldiers, to me, they represent a different philosophy in how people approach Warfighter. Team soldiers are, at least from what I can tell, for those who want as much firepower in their mission teams as possible at the lowest cost. Because you can arm team soldiers with whatever you want, that makes them more versatile compared to non-player or squad soldiers. And team soldiers are less expensive compared to player soldiers. For me, team soldiers are just too expensive for the resource points for what they do compared to non-player soldiers, which is a closer equivalent to their abilities compared to a player soldier. Player soldiers seem to have a base value of 7 or 8, plus whatever skills and abilities they're equipped with. That number can vary, but many of the player soldiers I've used in missions have a base value that when I strip it away, the skills and abilities, it's about 7 or 8. Team soldiers seem to have a base value somewhere around 5. And considering what they do, I think that's a little too much. I'd rather pay a few more points for a player soldier to get that extra card draw, or go a lot cheaper with a non-player or squad soldier if I want more firepower, even if they're not armed with the exact weapons I want. And, like non-player soldiers, to get into that, their base value seems to be 0 or 1. And so for me, if a team soldier had a base value of 0 or 1, well, then I'd be more than happy to try it. In fact, it wouldn't be bad if team soldiers would replace non-player soldiers, if that was the base value. But hey, that's me. And I know other people out there love team soldiers, and they love to play with them, and they find the resource point cost to be fine, and I'm not going to disagree with that. And I know that there are still many areas that can be explored in Warfighter. I want to talk a little bit about Warfighter Vietnam. From what I understand, the game is either being sent to or has already been sent to the printers. That means the game may be out as early as April, but there is no guarantee of that. So don't hold me or DVG to the April release date. However, it should be out sometime later this spring. Warfighter Vietnam is the first of the Cold War sets for the series. It promises to be quite interesting given the new weapons, skills, and focus compared to modern or World War II. And that's what makes the Warfighter series so interesting for me, is that it can encompass many different areas while still being quite entertaining to play. And it is the entertainment value that I enjoy so much about Warfighter. And we can talk about the realism and what is expected from standard war games, but what I find fascinating about the Warfighter system is that little bit of Hollywood that's thrown in. Pulling victory from certain defeat or defeat from certain victory is what makes the game so enjoyable for me. For Warfighter Vietnam, the setting will be somewhat familiar in terms of the jungle, which is part of the Warfighter World War II Pacific Core set, but the weapons, skills, opponents, and emphasis will certainly be different as well. And speaking of expanding, what is going on with the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel? February has been a pretty productive month for the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel. I have completed 8 more videos, which will be scheduled to come out later this year. That means I only have 4 more videos to go to complete all of 2024. I have left October open, which means that I will be creating a horror theme for at least 2 or 3 episodes that will play in that month, besides the podcast at the end. And just to reiterate, I make 40 videos a year that are, cut, edited, and things like that. And then the final Wednesday of each month is the Speak Out and Play podcast. So that's 52, and there's 52 Wednesdays in a year, and so that's how that works out. Going back to the horror approach, it's not that unusual for me because I've done an Attack of the Mutants playthrough each year on the last Wednesday of October since 2019, and the first year that I started the channel. Now, I haven't finalized what other games will constitute the rest of the episodes for October, but all of them will be horror-themed in some manner, with the possible exception of the first episode. That means a revival of the Thrilling Tales series, at least for one video in October. But there may be more as I progress in finishing out the videos for the year, especially since I have 9 months left to go after October is complete. My goal now is to create 4 videos a month every month. Beginning in March, I have the final 4 videos for the year to create, and now I will be getting new games and making new videos, which will replace at least a few of the videos that are currently scheduled. The videos that are replaced will be pushed back probably to next year. In other words, when I get in Warfighter Vietnam and some of the other games that I've ordered on Kickstarter or games that I've purchased, I will make videos on them that month, and they will be released the following month. And so the videos that they replace are going to be pushed back. My philosophy in creating videos is to maintain a once-per-week schedule. I started Seek Out and Play to demonstrate that videos with multiple edits and created in a professional fashion, for lack of a better word, is achievable. Plus, it can be done in a reasonable amount of time. And since the first Wednesday of April 2019, that is what I've done. Now, the drawback to that is sometimes that the overall quality of the video can suffer somewhat as I meet the deadlines to make new videos. So by getting this far ahead and then creating 4 videos per month, rather than going to my old schedule of going several months without making any new videos, I hope to improve the overall quality of what I do while maintaining that schedule. Now, ideally, I could just make 1 or 2 videos each month and stop the weekly schedule. That would mean even greater quality and broader topics for each video. But since I've gone this far down the rabbit hole of weekly content, I'm not going to stop now. And speaking of weekly content, here is what is coming up for March 2024 on the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel. For the first Wednesday of March 2024, Seek Out and Play presents a personal essay on what is tempo. The video addresses the questions of what tempo means, how it applies to games, What are the best circumstances in which tempo can be the most effective? And while the term tempo is normally applied to chess, it can be applied to games in general, which includes wargames. For wargamers and gamers alike, this personal essay on tempo can help you better understand, or at least experience another point of view, of how it works for your next game. The player who understands tempo and how it can be applied to their next game will garner an important advantage. For the second Wednesday of March 2024, you can learn more about how teams are set up for Warfighter Fantasy by DVG. This short video focuses on the rules presented in page 25 of the Warfighter Fantasy Rulebook. The video presents each hero being purchased, along with their weapons, skills, spells, and gear. For those who are new to Warfighter Fantasy, the video will help them better understand how teams are created for each mission. The goal being to create the best team that reflects your wishes for the game. For the third Wednesday in March 2024, Seek Out and Play presents another in the series of Upfront Rules tutorials. This one is focused on weapons malfunctions and acquisitions. The video covers how the weapon malfunction rules work, when weapons become abandoned, and how opposing soldiers can retrieve them. For fans of Upfront, the video is designed to help explain a section of the rules that comes up for occasional use, as the situation is relatively rare, but it does happen often enough that it pays to understand the rules. Check out more videos on Upfront when you visit the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel. Also, I have an X and Facebook page which delivers news about the channel, along with a monthly podcast which you can find on Spotify and BuzzFeed. And if you want to support my efforts in maintaining the channel, I have a Patreon page for monthly donations, or you can buy me a beer for a one-time donation. Check out more videos on the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel, and I will see you next Wednesday. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for my next podcast, please put them in the comments section. I enjoy hearing about new topics in wargaming, so feel free to provide suggestions. Now, I promise I will not bite, but I might snarl a bit, so beware. If you have yet to subscribe to Speak Out and Play podcast or the Seek Out and Play YouTube channel, please do so, and I will see you next Wednesday. And if you see Sally, bring her all the way home.